coaches that oftentimes will blame clients for not getting results, usually in the way of, oh, you're too lazy, you are undisciplined, you didn't want to track your food, you didn't want to set yourself up for success by going to bed on time, you didn't want to, while 3 toddlers are screaming, running around, eating dino nuggets and mac and cheese, you couldn't prepare your own meal and one for your husband. And by the way, you also have 4 dogs because somehow you live on a farm. Like, these are just wildly unrealistic expectations to have for people that do generally have 23 hours of life outside of their fitness.
Andrew, Mr. PhD candidate in psychology. We're going to break down a fun conversation around the idea of kind of creating a strong relationship of built on trust, things like that, foundation with your client,
Okay.
but also ultimately that leading to setting them up for success. And I joke, I'm like, man, I gotta word it appropriately. Like, a relationship with your client, clearly that could go south in the wrong way. So you shouldn't have any relationships with your clients. But to be fair, that's how I met my wife. So
I was going to say, I feel like everyone in the industry that's married has met their significant other, whether it's by working in close proximity or working in close proximity after hours. You know, it's a client thing.
Yeah, it is. But we're not talking about that today. We're talking about setting your clients up for success by building a relationship that's founded in trust and communication. Okay?
Yeah.
So, how many times have you heard a coach go down the road of some form of, well, they just don't want it enough. They're not willing to try hard enough. They don't care, or some version thereof.
That one really chafes me. I think that there's a lot to be said around setting people up for success when it comes to everyone being responsible for their part of the equation. And I think one of the worst things that I can hear, and I don't usually have as much polarizing language, I am opinionated. However, let's get that caveat out of the way. I will say that one of the things that I hear most about new coaches,
because I was your client, and
around
I got
new
some
coaches,
stories. I got stories.
Reasons or results, Steven.
Reasons or results, Steve.
That was totally a joke. It's fine. I lost my train of thought. Line! But no, and so now I'm nervous. It's fine. But on the surface, I look calm and ready to drop bombs. It's fine. But yeah, so one of the worst things that I hear, new coaches that aren't equipped, and I say this because by and large, you can learn just about anything as a skill set. It might take you a very long time to be okay at it. And so this is when we look at the path of least resistance, how people pick their careers, how people pick their partners, how people pick a lot of things in life is oftentimes what is easiest to accumulate or to adopt.
Yep.
And from that perspective, coaches that oftentimes will blame clients for not getting results, usually in the way of, oh, you're too lazy, you are undisciplined, you didn't want to track your food, you didn't want to set yourself up for success by going to bed on time, you didn't want to, while 3 toddlers are screaming, running around, eating dino nuggets and mac and cheese, you couldn't prepare your own meal and one for your husband. And by the way, you also have 4 dogs because somehow you live on a farm. Like, these are just wildly unrealistic expectations to have for people that do generally have 23 hours of life outside of their fitness. And when you think about how you spend your time in a day. So when we hear people are too lazy, I hope that all these crazy types of exaggerated examples that oftentimes are very realistic when people are working 2 jobs and not getting enough sleep, or they work night shift and they're not getting the fitness results and they get frustrated, and the client or the coach usually says, hey, you're the problem, lacks complete emotional intelligence.
And one thing I'll share, so like, you're a coach right now and you're probably asking yourself on some level, do I do this? Have I done this? And listen, if we're in the coaching space, at some point in time, we've all done it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, just
100%.
call a spade there. But that said, when it comes to you as a coach, think about your business mentor, right? You know, are there people out there that they basically tell you, just try hard, or do the boring work, do the thing that you're supposed to be doing, and you're not doing it, and that's the reason you're failing? That's what it feels like, right? Because chances are you spent $5,000, $15,000, $25,000 on a program, and then that coach at some point in time basically told you in some way, shape, or form, just try harder. Imagine how that felt. And then think about that feeling for all of your clients that you're coaching, and just start to understand that where like, I'm trying, but I don't understand.
Yeah.
I thought I did well, but I didn't do well. I had these 48 things come up that you don't fully grasp or understand, and that's why this thing happened. There's a lot of reasons, and I joke, but I'll never forget the conversation of Steve, reasons or results. And on the other side of that, I'm like, all right, results, but it's like you go down that road and you don't want to necessarily, we didn't get into coaching for the sake of like just belittling people. So it comes down to how do we constructively help somebody, right? So if you don't like it being said to you, it's fair to assume that your clients don't like it when you say it to them, or your assistant coaches don't say it to them, or things like that. So, identifying that, like, first stage, know you have a problem. Okay, now you have a problem. So like, all right, cool. I've said this to my clients before. I want to change that habit, but like, I'm going down this road, and I think I gave them everything that they need to be successful, and they're just not doing the work. So where do I start looking to try to solve this so that way that's not my answer, or at least, hey, I've no stone unturned. I've done these 10 things, my 10-step checklist, or maybe it's 5 or 1 or whatever, before at the end of the day, well, yeah, truly they're just not doing their part. So where do I start?
Yeah, I mean, to answer simply, you can start anywhere you'd like, right? Because everyone has a unique set of circumstances. Now, well, I will say...
Don't generalize, Andrew. Last episode, Andrew, we said 80 to 90% in a framework. It's got to fit.
My name is Glenn. So, cut it. Cut it. Fourth wall break.
It's funny when when Andrew loses his train of thought.
I need a second. I'm just picturing a gremlin in the corner up in that roof now that I looked over there. I got to turn away.
What?
But okay, so I think it's really important that stop it, dude. Stop it. It's 7:15. We got to mark this one. I'm marking this one on my watch so that we know where to cut it. And so all I say is that because there's so much uncertainty, we want to control the things that we can. And we want to get rid of everything else that we would consider noise, meaning in the approach that we're going to suggest here of being a more emotionally intelligent coach, you want to make sure that above all else, the other person feels understood. You don't have to agree with them. You don't have to make it okay for them, right? Let's just start with that, because there are people that hear emotional intelligence and they think about something that we call idiot compassion, which just means that anything that they do is considered okay, it's considered right. It's like, oh, Mimi, whatever you need, all I'm is. We don't want to enable people by doing that for excessive periods of time, because that doesn't service originally why they came to us. And it's actually an ethical dilemma. And so if you ever have someone that's overly placating, or if you're super nice like I was for about 5 or 6 years of my coaching stint inside of there, you won't be very effective. Right, he kind of got the other end.
That didn't happen in the past 3 to 4 years.
I will say, when I did coach Steven here, we were doing a performance goal, which is either you get the outcome that you want or you don't. And it's very much, which is why I prefer performance-based coaching, because it's either you did it or you didn't, right? And then we just scaffold and skill around that of like, well, what do you need help with? What are the obstacles, right? When we talk about general health and fitness and people that aren't necessarily looking at these high-stakes outcomes, maybe they just want to lose a couple pounds, we do take a slightly more compassionate approach, because it's most people when they hire a personal trainer, we hear this all the time. They're like, oh, they start dumping all their life problems on you. And there's a term called the armchair psychologist, which is basically where people are just inherently, they inherently just want to go connect with another human being, and they want to be doing that in a way that's healthy, or it's going to be conducive to something else, right? And so going back to being emotionally intelligent, you need to make sure that people feel understood. Now, there's a lot of coaches that will say, yeah, I do that all the time. If you're doing, I do that all the time as I'm saying this out loud, you're the problem. Sorry. Or you want to think about it, because what's not happening is that you might not be allowing or demonstrating to the other person that you truly understand their concerns. And if people don't feel understood, their receptiveness to taking on new information or doing things is going to decrease drastically. So when coaches now, on the other hand, will say, hey, you're too lazy or you don't want it, what that's lacking is that compassion. What it's lacking is an understanding of that person's perceived circumstances. And what that does is immediately shuts down and it creates a confrontational type of relationship, which realistically, like if someone's going to berate me or belittle me or make it seem like they don't have my back, why would I ever do anything that's potentially very uncomfortable physically, mentally, or emotionally for them? It wouldn't make, even if I'm paying them. And so that's where I think we should probably start any coaching relationship, is just a level set. Understand the situation, which is what you do during a consultation when you're trying to provide value, make them feel understood. But I mean, in your experience, because obviously, you know, you coach the business side of things and like you're constantly peopling, and I've never met anyone that just trips into a full client load without having any kind of ad spend. Like, it's wild, but you clearly do the people thing very well. How do you help people inherently feel like you understand their problems, or how do you create that connection?
So I think for me, it's removing the ego of having to understand what they're talking about, what's going on in their world, their day to day, and just being willing to ask the dumb questions, like repeatedly. Like it's just like, hey, I don't understand. Hey, I'm gonna ask this in a really naive sense, and like really leading with that to just make sure you truly do understand foundational. Like you said, somebody's dealing with kids and dogs and house and job and all these things and sleeping and weekends and family, and you have no idea. So you go down this road of just asking the same question time and time again. We got to hang out with one of our clients, and I've probably asked the questions that I've asked today multiple times before in different ways. And at some point, I'm sure he's probably like, I've answered this already. But there's usually like you ask the question differently and then the message comes across differently. They understand it differently. I heard it differently. There's some version thereof that eventually it completely clicks. And now you can then deliver the feedback or the answer that they need, you want them to hear, whatever it might be, in such a way that it now kind of solves all of the problems at hand, whereas before you were just missing something. So for me, it does come down to, I'll just keep asking the questions. Usually, like, I'm not going to, why? Oh,
Yeah,
but why?
don't do that.
Because
Don't do that.
that doesn't end well.
Oh gosh.
But I can ask the same question 5 different ways. I don't realize I'm asking the same question. And I can start to truly understand all the pieces. Or I can hit a different nerve, if you will, and they tell me a different piece of the puzzle that I'm not necessarily seeing.
Yeah.
And that allows me to now, like, okay, here's how I can navigate getting them to do the thing that they need to do because I know it's going to be good for them. Or at least it helps get us an additional piece of data. And I feel like a lot of coaches in general, like coaching as a whole, like no matter what the industry is, you're afraid to look dumb. So you're afraid to ask questions that potentially make you look dumb because you're like, well, I already asked this 3 times, but I still don't understand. Like, we'll ask a 4th time, ask a 5th time. Like you suck at asking questions if you still don't understand what the answer to the question was. In the nicest way possible. So for me, that's really the goal, is just like, I just need to understand. I'm relentlessly going to ask why in a question-oriented way to find the real answer, because then eventually I can deliver what you should do in the right way that you'll hear it.
Yeah. And I love that you use a little bit of the perspective / framing shift there of how do you it's a dumb question, right? And so automatically it creates a sense of like, oh, no, it's not dumb. Right, and it creates that almost a little bit of a pull on their end of like, oh no, how can I make you feel better about it? And it bases a lot of basic human emotion off of that, and really emotionally intelligent. And I think that also from a frame shift perspective, or just controlling or trying to understand someone's perspective, going back to and kind of tying this in with that, there's a great story about an elephant, and it has a really big trunk. Not that that matters. And there's 6 blind guys, and they've never seen an elephant in their life. And so I don't know about you, but if I picture 6 blind guys going to the zoo and they're like, hey, we're gonna have you touch this really massive animal, and we want you to be able to describe it immediately. I think this is a great scene for Adam Sandler and like that group of comedians to make a movie. If you're listening somehow, please make that movie. But they so anyway, the story goes, and it's probably a couple hundred years old. They show up to the zoo, and these guys are touching different parts of the elephant. There's 6 of them. One is holding the trunk, one is holding the ears, the legs, the stomach, the tail, and the tusks. You thought I was going to say, well, you nasty, right? And so
You're
as they're
you.
going through this, they're being told to describe it after they stop touching it. And the first guy that's holding the trunk says, "Oh, well, it has to be a snake." And naturally, they don't really know how to describe because they've never seen one. And so as they're sitting there, first guy, snake, right? It's long, it's muscular, it's like a little stringy. Could be a lot of other things, but he said snake, right? And it's like, cool. And he insisted, absolutely insisted that it was the truth. The second guy is holding the tusks, right? And there's these long, sharp objects, and he's like, "Oh, it's got to be a spear, clearly, because it's long and sharp, and probably good for stabbing, right?" Kind of a weird hobby to have, but sure. The third guy's holding the ears, and it must be a big blanket because he's big, soft, and so yeah, definitely got to be a blanket. Fourth guy's pushing on the abdomen, and it's like, "Oh man, this thing's really stiff, right? It must be a wall, right? A big, bony, meaty, fleshy wall." And so, man, I'm setting myself up on this one. Pushing on the wall, right? And so the fifth guy is now pushing on the legs. And he's like, okay, it must be like a pillar. This thing's not moving, which I don't know why the elephant's still for this long, but it is the story, so chill, right? Must be a big, strong column, right? And last guy's holding the tail. And the tail is like, oh, it must be a rope. So all that to say is that when they were asked to then describe it, they, exactly as I said, gave their piece of it. And they said and they insisted with fervent theory that it was the entirety of it. And as soon as they heard the other guys describing it, they're like, "Oh, that's not what it is. Are you dumb?" And they would get so mad at each other because they had their own piece of the truth. And so when I talk about people being more understanding and bringing that kind of blind elephant perspective to a coaching relationship, it is one of the fastest ways to engender a sense of trust and genuine curiosity in that you have one small piece of the entire equation. There's no way for you to write the best perfect plan. So you got to give up being a perfectionist inside of a client-centered paradigm, right? This is when you think about a therapist. Therapists have to have an unconditional positive regard. They have to truly trust that they want the best for you, and the client has to feel that before they're willing to start opening up and making these changes. And that comes from trying to understand the tail, trying to understand the tusks, the ears, the belly, the legs, and the trunk. And when we do that, I think it really opens up some natural dialogue for people to do that, and other fleshy parts for sure.
I just have a question about the story.
They were Indian.
Well, you said they were going to the zoo.
Yeah.
What zoo has pet columns?
You
Or
know,
like pet walls?
the blind zoo. Have you ever been?
I'm confused.
Well, you have to be blind to get in the zoo, so it's.
I'm kind of confused.
I
They
don't
didn't know
know.
they were going for an animal.
Listen, I think.
Tail, more snake in my mind than trunk, but anyways.
I mean, listen, you could mistake a lot of different appendages for sure.
Yeah.
Eyeballs could be squishy jellyfish,
There you go.
right?
Yep.
Coconuts. So, there's a lot of different things that it could be. And so, reeling it back in here, Steven. Cut to me, it's fine. I think that when it comes to being a coach that can hold space for their people to allow them some time to figure things out instead of constantly berating them or being frustrated, which I think that if you're ever frustrated, you're lacking context, you're missing information somewhere because people don't do stuff that's crazy to them. And that's where it's really important for coaches to keep that frame of mind and be curious versus judgmental, which I love this. There's a quote from Ted Lasso, and he says, basically one rich billionaire completely belittles and makes fun of Ted Lasso. And he's like, you're shitty at darts and you're a terrible soccer coach, because he's a U.S. guy coming to London to teach soccer. And, Ted whoops his ass in darts, long story short. And he said, I feel bad for people that more or less are judgmental instead of curious, because they lose out on so many different opportunities. And that's not, when we talk about making coaching a meaningful connection inside of your career, if you're not connected to it and it's not deeply meaningful for you, you're not going to stick around long. Let's just be honest, unless you're just making a boatload of money, because we're hardwired to look for that.
Yeah.
So, all that to say, connection, understanding, those would be the second things that I would say in a client-centered relationship of how to get people to trust you and build that relationship. But, I mean, what about you?
The best coaches ask the best questions, ultimately,
Yeah.
at the end of the day. I think people who show up all the time and always know the answer are missing out on a lot of opportunity to get somebody to learn something.
Yeah.
And we know that as much as we want a coaching relationship to last indefinitely forever, That's not realistic. So how do we get them to learn and understand some of the basic principles? We need to ask questions to get them to self-solve and self-understand things.
Yeah.
You're there to answer questions when they don't know the answer. You're there to help guide them. You're there to give them A, B options, so that way it's not A through Z and they, just get confused with all the opportunities. But the best coaches ask the best questions. The best coaches are not afraid to potentially appear dumb and ask the dumb questions. And the more you can simplify something, the better off you're going to be, because now you absolutely know that you're both talking the exact same language. Because we innately all say different words for different things. And that a lot of times is just what causes confusion out of the gates. So.
Yeah. Well, I mean, how do you, so, obviously question asking is a large portion of what we're both suggesting. How do you select which questions you draw their attention to? Because I'm sure that you would agree, if you ask the wrong question, you can completely derail everything that you walked in and are trying to achieve, much like we've seen a little bit today. How would you suggest that people go in there and effectively help steer the conversation by picking the right question?
So we're all a little bit biased just as humans, and we think certain ways, which is going to influence the questions that we ask. But for you, going down the road of coaching and whatnot, and especially kind of health, nutrition, fitness out of the gates, it's generalized things that I would start off with that are as unbiased as possible.
Yeah.
Hey, do you work out consistently? Yes. Fantastic. Hey, what does working out consistently look like? How many days a week? Oh, okay, cool. When you go 3 days a week, how many minutes do you work out every time you go? Oh, okay. And you just, you continue, you start high and just really dig down deeper and deeper each time. Because if you go down the road of, well, hey, I recommend everybody works out at least 4 hours, a week and split up in 5 sessions a week and everything like that. Do you do that? Yes or no? No. Well, maybe they worked out 6 hours a week in 6 sessions a week and they accidentally worked out more, or they accidentally worked out less and they just, no, I don't do that specifically. Well, hey, do you work out? Yeah. Hey.
Yeah.
And just keep going down those levels.
Yeah. I think that starting from the big picture and drilling down, there's a lot of things that you could pay attention to. And so narrowing it down to what's preventing the essential work from happening, I think kind of recalls back to a previous episode where we talked about how to simplify stuff. And if people, could be doing a gut colon toe cleanse and they at the same time could be doing, stop. Man. I tried to broke myself. It's fine. But there's so many different things that people could be engaged in from a behavior perspective. Do you need to walk 10,000 steps a day? Do you need to walk 20,000 steps a day? Do you need to drink 48 ounces of water? Do you need to drink 86, 64? Like, there's so many different decision-making trees that at the end of the day, rather than being specific about it, starting from general, like drink, half your body weight, start there, or drink more is ideally what you would do from starting wherever they are. If they're drinking, 10 ounces, maybe go to 12 instead of saying, here's a blanket statement. But you wouldn't know what to recommend until you've asked those questions. And so one of the favorite exercises that I have that really helped me learn how to be constructively curious, which is more or less a tactical thing that I would suggest if you're trying to connect with your clients, you want to truly be a good coach, you need to be collaborative in that effect. But go through the 5 W's, who, what, when, where, why. And then if you want to add the bonus of the 6th, how, and ask the same question using each of those.
That's 5 W's and 1 H.
That one.
Yeah, not
right.
6.
There's a letter in there. I'm barely literate, guys. Chill. And so when you think about it, though, like, one would be if we wanted to talk about your nutrition, which, if you haven't taken our nutrition course yet, you need to go and check it out.
Why?
No,
why haven't you taken it?
What's that?
Why haven't you taken it?
Oh, I thought we were playing the game. Okay,
No.
I wasn't prepared for that. I was like, okay, action, scene.
Done.
Doing some improv. But, I mean, that would be a great question of, like, why have you not taken it would be one way of asking, with the idea that we want to steer people towards taking the course, right? Another would be, well, what's stopping you?
You're going to give me reasons, or do you actually want to get some results? You should take the course.
That's a expert advanced level, because there's no W in that.
Yeah.
Right? When we talk about what's stopping you from taking the course, why have you not taken the course yet? When are you planning on taking the course? They're all things that are looking at when are you looking to experience this specific educational offering. And we're asking the same thing, but there might be different contexts that we want to ask in those different ways. that make us more effective in helping people give us the answer in a way that we can actually digest. And it's the same thing with your clients. And one of my favorite things to do for those of you, and this is one of my last tactics for this episode, is that when someone asks you a question, and this is probably one of the best things that anyone can do as a communicator, if they ask it in a way that you don't understand, you can ask them to ask the question in a different way, right? And it's okay to say when you don't understand things. And I think that that level set honestly engenders such a different sense of trust inside of people that, oh, okay, he actually cares enough to take some time to try to understand what I'm asking. Now, if you're kind of doing that like 4 times, then that gets a little gratuitous. You know, people get a little annoyed sometimes, so you gotta just be sensitive to that.
We
But
should test the water tomorrow to see how many times we can do it before we irritate people.
oh, that's fair. That's fair. So all that to say, thank you so much, guys, for giving us your attention on the episode today. If you haven't smashed that subscribe button, you definitely want to make sure that you're staying up to date because we have a lot of great episodes in this season. We're really excited to bring you. So in the meantime, thanks for tuning in to Beyond the Pump, where
We break down the business of fitness and nutrition.
just
See
the
you guys
tips,
next
baby.
time.